Hi, I'm Aisha Formansky with Beaducation.com here. Today I'm going to teach you how to rivet using nail head rivets, which are super cool because they already have half the work done for you. Now, the motivation for this class is that recently at all of our trade shows, the one question we're answering all day long is, how do you rivet? So we've been demoing all over the United States. We thought that we would bring this quick video to you to help you out. Now, what is riveting? Now, riveting is a cold connection. Cold connection is when you take two pieces of metal or multiple pieces of metal and you use a stem of some sort, if it's a wire or tubing or a nail head rivet, which is a wire with one end that is flat, and you thread them through those components and you flare out the top of the wire to lock them all together. It's a pretty cool technique, so you don't have to solder. So let's break down the specifics of what we're going to be doing here today. Now, we're going to be flaring out the wire end on a nail head rivet. So we're going to go in, we're going to trim the wire down to about 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter in length. I'm going to get back to why that measurement in a little bit. And you're going to use the chisel end of your riveting hammer. And you're going to begin by lightly striking the wire and traveling across the wire. And then you're going to pivot and do it again. Now, riveting is like a light tapping. So if you do stamping, we're not going to be doing big giant blows here. This is very, very light tapping. It's very, very fun. Now, I know I mentioned 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter in length. Now, if you choose to use 0.5 millimeter, the only difference is your rivet wire, when it's all done and flared out, it's just going to be a little bit smaller. So the longer the material you leave, the larger your finished rivet will be. There are a lot of rivets available. So something you're going to want to keep in mind is the diameter of the rivets that you purchase. The ones we're going to use in class today are 1.5 millimeter in diameter. So we're going to use the 1.5 millimeter hole punch. And the reason that's important is when you create the hole for your rivet, you want it to be the tightest fit possible. So there are hole punch pliers, screw-down hole punches, drill bits, electric drills that you can use to create whatever hole you need for the rivets that you want to use. But remember, make sure to keep the fit nice and tight. If it's loose and the nail head is wobbling around in the hole and you begin to rivet the wire down, lots of times what will happen is you'll get a crooked rivet. It'll actually start to lean and sometimes even just fall over. So make sure you get that nice tight fit. Let's say you're at home and you have a hole punch plier that's just a hair smaller than the rivet you want to use. What are you going to do? You can just pick up one of these handy dandy round needle files that come in a handy dandy set. And you're just going to place the round file into the hole and just lightly twist, flip the piece over and do it again, and just open that hole up until you can pass your rivet straight through. To complete the projects in today's class, you'll need these tools and materials: a riveting hammer, 1.5 millimeter hole punch plier, heavy-duty flush cutter, a bench block, a fine point permanent marker, nail head rivets, and a variety of blanks. The first step to riveting is creating the holes in the pieces so you can thread your nail head rivet through. I have two blanks here. I have our brass artisan blank here and a sterling silver flower that I did a little stamping on. And I'm going to rivet the little flower to the artisan blank, just like this in the center. So the first thing that I need to do is to create a hole in the top piece. So let's do that now. What I like to do is use a Sharpie marker. Now, this comes in handy. Get this off here. Because I can just eyeball the center of the blank and place a mark. In the center. Now, this is going to help me when I align my hole punch plier. Now I'm going to bring in my 1.5 millimeter hole punch plier and place it right on the mark. Now once I get this in position, we're going to go in for a super close up here. Now if you look closely on the pin, do you see how one side is touching the blank and the other side is cut up to the left side? Now you want to make sure that where the pin touches the blank, now that's not the center. So you just want to look really, really closely and place the punch right in the center of the blank, and then squeeze firmly. Now these hole punch pliers are very convenient. Sometimes you have to force the metal off the pin a little bit, but that's okay. So now I have my hole in my top blank. Now I want this little flower to sit in the center of the artisan pendant. So the trick to that is grab your trusty Sharpie marker again and eyeball that flower so it's right in the center. Then take your Sharpie marker and pass the tip of the marker through the center hole that you already created to create a mark on the back side. See if I can really get that ink to show well. There we go. So now I have my little rivet hole mark on the artisan pendant. And I'm going to take my 1.5 millimeter hole punch plier again and punch that hole. Sometimes, I was actually glad that this happened. This is brass, so it's a pretty hard metal, and the punch doesn't want to pass through the blank with that much ease. We recommend that these pliers be used with care so that you don't ruin the pin. But truth be told, I actually punch metal that's a little bit thicker than what we recommend sometimes, and I just replace the pin often. The convenience is worth it for me. So I'm going to just force it through here. So now we have our second hole here in our artisan blank. When working on a design and you want to place multiple rivets, that changes things just a little bit. So let me show you how to do that. So here I've already punched the top piece with the word shine, and I'm going to come back in with my Sharpie marker. And I'm going to place a mark on the top piece where I want those rivets to go. So I'm going to place one at the top, and one at the bottom. Then I'm going to use my 1.5 hole punch plier again. And punch out those two holes. I'm going to take a second here to explain something as well. If you look really closely on my plier, you see there's a little white piece of paper there. That's just a little piece of business card that I placed over the pin. The pin is mounted on this little circular stump here, and sometimes when you put a hole through the metal like this, that stump, as the pin comes down, strikes the metal, and sometimes it can mar the metal. So I place this paper here. Some of the pliers do come with this guard, but I still put the paper on just in case. So now I have the two holes in my top piece. Now I'm going to place this onto my copper base piece and just hold it in place where I want it to be. think that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to place a mark only through one of the holes. Now your immediate reaction would be, okay, I'm gonna put all the holes in the top piece and then I'm gonna put all the holes in the bottom piece. Now I'm gonna have you do it one at a time, and the reasoning is that if you place all the holes all at the same time, lots of times when you go to rivet the second rivet, it's crooked all of a sudden. So it's better to be safe and not sorry and do it this way. Now we're gonna punch the hole. In the blank. This blank is made out of pewter, so it's very soft. Punch works pretty well. Just like that. So the next step, we're going to start to rivet, and then I'll show you how to do the second rivet. Alrighty, the next step is getting us closer to riveting. So what we're going to do here is we're going to work on this guy. And remember from the earlier step, we placed the top hole. So we are ready for action there. So let's pull in the bench block and grab one of these little copper nail head rivets. Now I'm going to put the flat end on the back side. So what I like to do is place the rivet on my bench block, just like that, and then thread my pieces on. It's a little easier than holding it up in the air and trying to juggle the whole thing. Now I came up with a great little trick to help you. You want to cut your rivet wire down to about 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter in length. Now how would you just eyeball that? Of course, there are probably some of you out there that can just eyeball it and do that. And then there's other folks like me who need a little assistance. So what I've done here is I've created what I call riveting tiles. Now, riveting tiles are a pretty simple idea. Let me rotate this around here. They're little blanks, and this circle blank is 24 gauge. Now, 24 gauge is about 0.5 millimeter, and this blank is 18 gauge, which is about 1 millimeter. And so what I've done is I've placed a hole in both of them using the large end of the screw down hole punch, and then punched a hole here and added a little leather. So these are my riveting tiles, and this is how they work. So I need to trim this wire down, leaving about 0.5 millimeter. So all I do is grab my 0.5 millimeter riveting tile and thread that right on, right over that little nail head rivet. And then I'm going to grab my flush cutter and placing that rivet right in the center my flush cutter, and see how my flush cutter is flat against that riveting tile. And then I'm going to cover the wire here and cut. Then I'm going to remove the riveting tile, leaving 0.5 millimeter. So now I'm going to come in with my riveting hammer, like this. Now, the riveting hammer has two ends. It has the chisel end and the flat end. And we're going to start by striking the rivet with the chisel end. You come in and you start to strike the little rivet. You're going to travel across the top of the wire. And once you've tapped it a few times, you want to rotate the whole piece and begin tapping along the top. Again here. Now what you're doing is you're slowly splaying or flaring out the top of that wire. And by rotating it, we're hopefully splaying the metal evenly. Now let's see if we can get a super close-up of what's happening here. So with riveting, it's really just light tapping and patience. Now when the metal is mostly splayed out like it is now, that's when you flip the hammer to the flat side and you're going to drive the metal down to the surface of the pendant. Just like that. Now we'll do the second rivet. You'll see here, we need to rivet that second end down. It's popped up here. This is also giving us a chance to make any adjustments. If we've lost track of where the pendant was and it's over here now, you want to make sure to get it nice and lined up here, like so. Now, I just press this piece together with my non-dominant hand and grab the 1.5 millimeter hole punch plier again. And what I do is I pass the punch through the top piece and just lightly squeeze. What I'm doing is creating a mark on the back blank. And then I'm going to swivel this out of position. Follow through. Creating the hole in that back blank there. Now earlier, I know I said this was a copper blank and a pewter blank, and in actuality it is. It's a copper plated pewter blank, which creates this really great look, but also allows them to be really soft and malleable, which is nice with stamping. So now I'm going to swivel the top piece back into place there, lining up those two holes. Here comes the second nail head rivet, and just like before, place those pieces through that little nail head rivet. Come in again with my handy dandy riveting tile and my razor flush cutter. Now, you noticed before I covered my cut, these little wire rivets really do fly, so careful. Wear safety glasses or just be really careful and make sure to cover your cuts. Remove that riveting tile. And then repeat riveting the second side just like you did the first rivet. And there we have it. Finished little pendant with 2 rivets. With the flower pendant, there are a couple of challenges in riveting, and so these are great learning opportunities that we can share. So I have the little flower blank on the artisan pendant. I've already created the 2 holes. I have the nail head rivet here. Now this is a design choice if you wanted to have the flat nail head portion sunny side up, facing outward, or on the back side. Originally, my design was I was going to have the flat nail head on the front. So let me show you this. Just like this. And I thought, oh, that'd be cute. You know, we can rotate it and get it in place. It's so whimsical. But then I realized something. When you flip this artisan blank upside down and place it on the block, because of the beaded edge on this artisan blank, it actually sits raised, and we need the resistance of the bench block to make contact with the nail head rivet, so it wasn't going to make contact. So last minute design change, I'm actually going to flip it around and do it the other way, like this. Then I realized, second challenge, we won't be able to use the riveting tiles because the riveting tiles are larger than the artisan blank. So when I went to place it on top and over the rivet, I hit the edge of the artisan blank before I could reach all the way down to the base here. So we're gonna eyeball it. So this is a great way to show you how to do that. So what you do is I thread the blanks onto the nail head rivet, and then what you can do is just pick up the piece by clamping the nail head rivet in your cutter. Pick it up here in your hands. I hope you can see this. I'm gonna get my cutter nice and low in the piece there and cut. Just like that. Once you've trimmed your wire and made sure that you have 1/2 millimeter to 1 millimeter remaining there, we're ready to rivet. Now this artisan blank also has a loop here. That comes around the back. So as you see, I have my piece sitting with the bail off the back so we don't damage it while we're riveting. Now, as you know, I have been using a riveting hammer to show you the traditional way to rivet, which is flaring out the metal using the chisel end of the riveting hammer, rotating, creating an even flare. But truth be told, sometimes I like to use a chasing hammer. So I'm going to show you how to do that here. I use the round end of the chasing hammer. Now the only thing that you want to be really careful about when you're doing this is making sure that you don't accidentally strike your piece around the rivet. So make sure that you're being really careful to only strike the top of the rivet here. And just like before, just lightly tap. Now, when you use the chasing hammer, the rivet will just have a little bit more texture to it. If you rotate around and hammer evenly, it'll have that nice traditional hills and valleys kind of textured look to it, which is pretty nice. I'm gonna keep working it a little bit more. It looks pretty good. Once you've flared this out really nicely using that round end of the chasing hammer, you can either leave it like this as long as it's flared out and the two pieces are nicely connected, or you can flatten that down using the flat side of the chasing hammer, or coming in, if you have a riveting hammer around, and using the flat end of the riveting hammer if you want to really press that metal and push that metal down to the surface of your pendant.